You're not my daughter anymore. You made your choice. His voice didn't shake. Mine did on the inside. But I didn't let it show. We were standing in his oak-paneled study, late spring light pouring in from the window behind him, washing his silver hair in gold. It could have been a painting, father and daughter. But in that moment, we were nothing more than strangers bound by blood and broken expectations. I looked at the stack of envelopes he shoved across the desk. My eviction notice, college fund revoked, medical insurance canceled. Everything in black and white. He stared at me like I was filth. Pack your things. Be gone in 30 days. I didn't say a word. I simply nodded, turned, and walked out. But even as my fingers gripped the brass handle of his office door, one truth burned itself into my memory. One day, he'd need me, and I'd be the one holding the power. My name is Savannah Brooks, and I was 19 the day my father cut me out of his life. He said it was because of a mistake. But what he really meant was, I chose something he couldn't control. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, in a house that looked perfect from the outside, 3 stories of stone and glass nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, with wraparound porches and hydrangeas that bloomed every June. But inside it was cold. Not the kind of cold you feel in your skin. The kind that sits in your bones. My father, Henry Brooks, ran the house like a company. He was a decorated former Navy officer turned financial consultant, known in town for his impeccable suits, his booming voice at church, and his quiet donations to the local Republican committee. He believed in discipline, structure, image, and, above all, obedience. My mother, Eileen, had once been a jazz pianist before marrying him. By the time I was 10, she barely touched the piano anymore. I think she gave up the day she realized she'd always come second to his vision of order. I was their only child, and for years, I tried to be the daughter he wanted. Honor roll, Sunday school, debate team, no dates, no lip gloss, and definitely no unnecessary opinions. I was in my sophomore year at Duke, studying pre-law, when I met Jada Hamilton. She was bright, sharp-witted, a design major with box braids dyed copper, and a laugh that could stop traffic. She also happened to be my first real friend, the first person who saw through my perfect GPA and polite smile and asked, "But who are you really, Savannah?" We clicked instantly. We studied together, watched dumb movies, shared childhood stories, hers colorful and chaotic, mine tightly measured and sterile. We stayed up one night talking until sunrise. And that night we kissed. It wasn't a game or an experiment. It felt right. Real. I kept it hidden for months. From my roommates. From social media. And especially from my family. But love has a way of growing through cracks, no matter how tightly you try to seal them. And then, like most catastrophes, it all unraveled at once. I'd forgotten to log out of my shared iCloud account. My dad opened his iPad and found a photo of us, Jada and I, wrapped in each other's arms at a Pride event in Raleigh. We were smiling, happy, free. He didn't call me, didn't even text. Instead, 2 days later, I came home for the summer to find my things boxed up in the foyer. A note taped to the door. "You've embarrassed this family enough. You made your bed." It wasn't just the emotional exile. He pulled every financial support lever he had on me. College tuition? Frozen. Health insurance? Cancelled. Savings account I'd been building since 16? Closed. He was a cosigner. My mother stood silently behind him when I confronted them. She didn't cry. Didn't speak. She just placed her hand on my shoulder like she wanted to say, "I'm sorry," but couldn't risk the words. My dad leaned against the stair rail with that smug look he always wore when handing down a punishment. "You made a choice," he said coldly. "Now live with it." So I did. I lived with roommates who rotated in and out of a dingy basement apartment in Durham. I worked 2 jobs, one as a server at a soul food cafe downtown, and the other folding inventory in the back room of a thrift shop. I even cleaned offices at night for extra cash. Jada stayed. She could have walked away, but she didn't. And when I finally graduated with loans stacked high in bags under my eyes, I didn't invite my parents. I didn't even tell them. My diploma came in the mail with the university seal wrapped in gold foil. I smiled when I opened it and whispered, "This one's mine." 5 years passed. I became a financial analyst, working with a boutique firm that specialized in retirement planning for small business owners. I started as an intern, then worked my way up by sheer grit. I specialized in asset protection, pensions, long-term care portfolios, the very things my father once bragged about understanding better than anyone. And one day, while analyzing a stack of incoming transfer requests, I spotted a name that stopped me cold. Henry Brooks. I stared at the screen for 5 whole minutes. My father. The man who cast me out. The man who thought I would fold. He had just transferred control of his pension to a trust managed by my firm. A trust that I, thanks to a promotion the month prior, was now legally authorized to oversee. The irony was nauseating. He had no idea who was managing his retirement. No clue that I was now the person reviewing his healthcare plan, approving reimbursements, and evaluating his payout options. For weeks, I wrestled with the weight of it. Was this fate? Was this revenge? Or was it the beginning of something more powerful? I called my grandmother, Miss Laverne, my father's estranged mother who raised me for summers when I was little. "I always told you, baby," she said, her voice soft and tired but proud. "Karma's not always a thunderclap. Sometimes she moves like water. Quiet, but unstoppable." That night, I pulled out a box from my closet, the same one I took with me the day I was disowned. Inside were photos of me as a child, my mom's piano music sheets, and a worn letter my dad once wrote on my 12th birthday, telling me I'd make him proud one day. I held it between my fingers and whispered, "Funny how life works." Because now, his retirement was in my hands. 3 months passed before I made a move. During that time, I kept everything professional. I reviewed my father's pension account the same way I reviewed every other client's, meticulously, thoroughly, and with unflinching precision. I made sure all his monthly disbursements were processed on time. I flagged and corrected a minor error in his medical reimbursements. I even upgraded his long-term care plan under a promotional benefit we'd received from a partner firm. All without a single word. All without letting him know who I was. Until I was ready. It happened on a rainy Wednesday morning. I scheduled the meeting through our client portal as portfolio strategy session, requested by manager. He assumed it was routine. He accepted without question. When he walked into the conference room at 10:02 a.m., I was already seated at the far end of the polished walnut table, reviewing a folder labeled with his name. He didn't recognize me at first. He looked around with his usual impatience, salt and pepper hair combed precisely, cufflinks flashing under the recessed lights, silver-rimmed glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. The same man who had once refused to look me in the eye. "Good morning, Mr. Brooks," I said smoothly, standing as he approached. His eyes flickered toward me. Recognition began to dawn. "Savannah?" I gave a small smile. "Please have a seat." He stared at me like a man seeing a ghost. "This must be a mistake," he said, voice hard and low. "No mistake," I replied, motioning toward the chair across from mine. "I've been managing your retirement portfolio for the past 3 months." The silence was thunderous. "You're joking," he said, finally sitting. "This is some setup?" I slid the folder across the table. "All documented. Your trust administrator assigned it to our firm. I was promoted to senior manager earlier this year, which makes me your direct contact." He opened the folder with stiff fingers. "Scan the first few pages." "You can't. This is confidential." "How the hell did they let you?" "I passed every audit, background check, and regulatory exam," I interrupted. "I earned this, Dad." The word "Dad" hung in the air like a slow-moving storm. He flinched. "You have no right." "No right?" I leaned forward, voice quiet but unwavering. "You disowned me. You revoked everything. I built myself from the ground up. And now I sit across from you not because of spite, but because fate decided to remind you of one simple truth. You don't get to define my worth." He fell silent, mouth twitching. I watched a flicker of something cross his face. Shame? Pride? Maybe both. but mostly it was disbelief. "I suppose you'll screw me over now," he said bitterly. "Drain the account. Teach me a lesson?" I shook my head. "I don't need to punish you. Life already did that for me. You live alone in that big empty house now. Mom left 3 years ago, didn't she?" His eyes narrowed. "She didn't tell you?" I asked gently. "We've been speaking. She's taking piano lessons again. With Jada." The look on his face, pure devastation masked by faux detachment. "She said to tell you something," I continued. "You chose rules over love. I chose music over silence." He sank back in his chair, the fight fading from his body. For the first time in my life, my father looked small. Not in stature, but in spirit. I stood and retrieved a small envelope from my briefcase. I placed it before him. "What's this?" he asked warily. "Your new retirement plan," I said. "Optimized. Safer. More efficient. I've included a forecast. You'll be stable well into your 90s, assuming you follow our recommendations." He blinked. "I'm not here to take anything," I added. "I'm here to make sure you're taken care of. Because that's who I am. Not because of you. In spite of you." I walked toward the door. Paused. "Also," I added over my shoulder, "you might want to double-check the power of attorney document you signed last year. You handed full discretionary control of your assets to our firm. I now sign off on everything." His jaw dropped. "And don't worry," I said calmly. "I won't abuse that. But I will make damn sure you never abuse your power again. Over anyone." As I stepped out of the room, my phone buzzed. A message from Jada. "How'd it go?" I texted back one word. "Done." I expected silence from my father after that meeting. But Henry Brooks wasn't wired to surrender, not even to reality. 3 days later, I got a call from the main office. "He's asking for a new account manager," my boss said, hesitating. "Claims there's a conflict of interest." "Legally, there isn't," I replied. "We're compliant. But let's grant the request." She paused. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I said. "But I want to attend the transition meeting. Just as an observer." The following week, I sat at the far end of the room while my colleague, Tom, introduced himself as the new client liaison. My father refused to look at me, not once. But I could feel the tension pouring off him like heat from a furnace. Tom walked him through the changes I'd made. The more diversified portfolio, the improved tax protections, the long-term care upgrade. Henry's responses were clipped, defensive. When Tom finished, I finally spoke. "Any questions, Mr. Brooks?" My father's eyes snapped to mine. "I have plenty," he growled. "Starting with why my daughter is acting like she has moral high ground when she—" Tom interrupted gently. "Savannah's role here is professional. Your personal disagreements fall outside our purview." Henry stood abruptly. "This is insane. I don't need charity from someone who betrayed this family." I stayed seated, hands folded. "You're confusing betrayal with becoming myself," I replied. He turned to Tom. "This firm is siding with her?" Tom calmly stood. "We're not siding with anyone. We follow what's best for the client. And frankly, sir, Savannah's management saved you from a likely 20% loss during Q1. Her choices preserved your care budget." My father opened his mouth, then shut it. His skin turned red. His pride was hemorrhaging. "Dismissed," he muttered. But I didn't move. "Before I go," I said, "I want to remind you of something." I opened a folder and pulled out a copy of the Durable Power of Attorney he had signed months earlier, blindly, on a standard onboarding day. "This grants me discretionary financial control for all retirement-related decisions unless revoked through formal legal process." His fingers twitched. "I'm not threatening you," I added. "I'm informing you. You handed this power over willingly, and I've exercised it responsibly." "You planned this," he snapped. "No," I said, "but life did. I just didn't walk away from the lesson." Later that evening, my mother called. "Your father's rattled," she said. "He should be," I replied. "He's not well, Savannah," she whispered. "He's tired. Bitter. He blames the world. But I think deep down he's terrified." I didn't respond. Not right away. He keeps replaying everything, she added. Wishes he hadn't been so harsh. But he won't say it. I close my eyes. He still sees love as leverage, Mom. I know, she sighed. But I'm proud of you. The way you handled it. You didn't humiliate him. You just stood tall. A week later, my cousin Brandon, the one golden child my dad always held up as the right kind of man, called out of nowhere. I've been hearing things, he said cautiously. Is it true you're handling his accounts? Yes, I answered. I'm not taking sides, but he's different lately. More withdrawn. I bit my tongue. You know, Brandon continued, he always used you as the cautionary tale. Don't be like Savannah. But look at you now. I didn't want to win, I told him. I wanted peace. He made it a war. Brandon paused. If you ever want someone on your side, I'm here. It surprised me. Growing up, Brandon was always smug, distant.
But now?
He sounded soft.
Honest.
And then came the letter. Folded neatly. Handwritten. No return address. It arrived at my office one Thursday morning. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Savannah. I've spent my life clinging to rules because I believed control was safety. But I lost my daughter because I couldn't let go of control long enough to see who you truly were. I was wrong.
About you.
About love. You deserved better from me. If you never forgive me, I understand. But if you ever come by the house again, I'll be here. And the door will be open.
Dad.
I sat in silence after reading it. Heart thudding. Hands trembling. It wasn't an apology in the way I once begged for. It didn't erase the pain or justify the years I fought alone. But it was a crack. A shift. A first step. And in that moment, I realized my power wasn't just in managing his finances. It was in mastering my own emotions, my boundaries, my life. I had won not because I could destroy him, but because I no longer needed to. It took me 2 weeks to respond to the letter. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to be sure I was walking through that door as the woman I had become, not the girl still waiting for her father's approval. When I finally pulled into the driveway of our old house, trim still perfectly painted, the garden slightly overgrown, I sat in the car for a full minute, staring at the front door. I used to imagine this moment would feel like victory, but instead it felt like closure. He opened the door before I even knocked. He looked older, thinner, softer somehow. We stood facing each other on the porch for a long beat. Then he stepped aside. You still take your coffee black? He asked, already walking toward the kitchen. Yeah, I said, stepping in. The house smelled the same, sandalwood, lemon cleaner, and a hint of cedar from the old books in his study. But something was different. There were signs of unraveling now. His rigid world had softened. A few dishes in the sink. A piano bench uncovered in the living room. As he handed me a chipped mug, he said, I watched your interview last month. That podcast about women in finance. I blinked. You listened? Twice, he admitted, eyes lowered. You sounded like your mother when she used to lecture me about my spreadsheets. That made us both laugh, an awkward, hesitant sound. But real. We sat at the kitchen table. And for the first time in over 8 years, we talked. Not just surface stuff. He told me how lonely it was after my mother left. How he buried himself in numbers and routine. How he thought control was the same thing as love. I thought if I gave you structure, you'd be safe, he said. But structure without love is just a prison. I nodded slowly. And love without acceptance is just manipulation. He flinched but didn't deny it. I won't pretend it didn't hurt, I said. There were nights I couldn't afford dinner. Nights I cried myself to sleep because I didn't know if I was crazy or brave for living my truth. I know, he whispered. You didn't deserve that. I reached into my bag and slid an envelope across the table. He opened it. Inside was a copy of the updated retirement portfolio. I added an annuity rider to cover any late-stage health needs, I explained, and moved part of your assets into a socially responsible fund, aligned with Mom's values. He smiled faintly. She'd like that. I'm not your enemy, Dad. I never was, I said. but I'll always defend the girl you threw away. That night, as I was about to leave, he walked me to the door. I don't expect you to visit often, he said. But can I call you sometimes? I hesitated, then nodded. Just remember, I added, this relationship moves at my pace. My boundaries stay in place. Understood, he said. Then, with shaking hands, he reached out and hugged me. Not the cold, brief pats he used to give, but something real. Back in Durham, Jada was waiting on the couch when I got home. She had my favorite Thai takeout laid out, candles flickering on the table. So, she asked, handing me chopsticks. I exhaled deeply. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it wasn't a war either. Progress, she smiled. Yeah, I said, taking a bite. Progress. She leaned into me. I'm proud of you. In the months that followed, something strange happened. I started receiving referrals. Not just from clients, but from people connected to my father, former colleagues, friends of friends, even a retired judge he used to play golf with. I hear you turned Henry Brooks's disaster into a masterclass, one said on a Zoom call. I hear you're the real deal, said another. I launched my own consultancy, focused on retirement protection for underserved communities, especially LGBTQ+ seniors estranged from their families. Legacy Financial Strategies. It started with 3 clients.
Now?
We're booked 6 months out. One morning, I hosted a workshop at the local rec center. As I wrapped up the session, an older woman approached me with watery eyes. My daughter came out last year, she said. I said some things I regret, but I'm learning. You helped me see where I went wrong. I smiled and handed her a flyer. Then you're already doing better than most. Behind her, Jada was setting up our table, arranging brochures with practiced ease. My mother, now a volunteer at a local music school, waved from across the room, her arms full of sheet music. And my father? He didn't attend, but he sent a donation through the foundation we helped him set up. It came with a note. For the work you're doing, I may never deserve your forgiveness, but I hope to be part of your legacy. That night, I visited my grandmother's old house. Miss Laverne had passed the year before, but I kept her tea set and her porch chair just as they were. I sat down with a cup of chamomile and whispered, You were right. Karma moves like water. But it carried me here. Jada joined me, resting her head on my shoulder. And as the stars blinked awake above us, I felt a strange, glowing peace. I'll never forget the first time I saw my father sitting in the waiting room of Harborstone Investments, nervously clutching the edges of a thin manila folder like a lifeline. His hair was thinner now, his clothes less tailored, and the fire in his eyes gone, replaced with something else. Hesitation. Humility. He didn't see me at first. I walked past him toward my glass-walled office, VP of Portfolio Strategies. My heels echoed on the polished floor, heads turned. My assistant, Jenna, gave me a knowing glance. Mr. Spencer. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says he's your father. I turned to the glass. He looked up at me. His eyes widened. He rose slowly, uncertain. Emily. I didn't speak. I tilted my head, as if trying to place him.
He stammered.
I didn't know you worked here. No, I said smoothly. I don't just work here. I run his portfolio now. Your new firm transferred it last quarter. Poor timing, honestly. He looked stunned. You manage my retirement? Among other things, I replied, leading him into the office. I took my place behind the desk. He stayed standing. I didn't know, he mumbled. That much is clear. He sat down hesitantly, the manila folder now damp with his grip. Emily, I need help. I made some bad investments. The crash wiped out a chunk of my reserves, and now the medical bills. His voice trailed off. And there it was. The moment I'd envisioned for years. Not with malice, but with inevitability. The same man who threw me out now sat across from me, humbled, needing rescue. I reviewed your file already, I said, flipping open my tablet. Your portfolio's bleeding. If you want to keep your house and insurance, I need to reallocate your funds and bring in private equity through one of my firms. He blinked. Yours? Yes, I said, leveling my gaze. Owned, operated, and founded by the daughter you disowned. His mouth fell slightly open. I didn't know what you were capable of. That never stopped you from judging me. He lowered his eyes. I tapped a document on my screen. I'll take care of this. Under one condition. You publicly retract the story you told about me. Admit the truth. That I didn't steal anything. That I was trying to help Mom. And you lied out of pride. His lips tightened. Your dignity, or your survival, I said calmly. Your choice. The silence was thick. Finally, he nodded. Okay, Emily. As he left my office, a heavy manila folder lighter, I sat in the silence that followed. I didn't smile. There was no joy in seeing him small. But there was clarity. I wasn't the reckless, selfish daughter he cast out. I was the woman who rose from betrayal and built an empire from ashes.
And now?
Now I held the keys to his future. Months passed. My father never again stepped foot in my office. He signed the public retraction. It ran in a small-town paper, the same one that once ran his scathing column accusing me of being a thief and a disgrace. This time his statement read, I made a mistake. Emily tried to protect her mother. What I took for betrayal was, in fact, courage. And I ask for her forgiveness, not because I deserve it, but because she has earned more than I ever gave her credit for. When I read it, I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just exhaled. Sometimes justice doesn't roar, it whispers. And this was one of those moments. I moved forward with restructuring his retirement assets. I didn't cut corners. I made sure he had exactly what he needed to stay afloat. But I didn't go beyond that. No bonuses. No favors. Just enough to make sure he didn't fall. That was the boundary I needed. Over time, I heard things through the grapevine. He'd sold the lake house. Downsized. Stopped playing golf. Started volunteering at the community center, something I never thought I'd see him do. Maybe helping others gave him the redemption he couldn't ask from me. I didn't call him on his birthday. He didn't call me on mine. But then, one evening, Jenna buzzed into my office. There's someone here to see you, she said. He didn't give a name. I stood at the window, watching the city's skyline pulse with light. Let him in. The door opened slowly. And there he was, older, thinner, walking with a cane. He held a small photo in his hand. It was me, age 12, wearing my science fair medal and a beaming smile. He stepped forward and placed it on my desk. I've been carrying this for a long time, he said. Back when I believed you could do anything. Before I let my pride destroy that belief. I didn't speak.
He looked at me.
I'm not here to beg. Or ask for more. I just want to say, I know I lost the right to be your father. But you never stopped being my daughter. Even when I didn't deserve you. And just like that, the years of pain, silence, and betrayal shifted. Not erased, but acknowledged. I stood and walked around the desk. We didn't hug, but we didn't need to. He left the photo, nodded once, and quietly walked away. I sat back down and looked at the image, at the bright-eyed girl who'd once needed her father's approval to feel whole. And I realized she didn't need it anymore. She had become her own foundation, her own vindication, her own future. And no one, not even the man who abandoned her, could ever take that away again.